When I first aired the podcast episode on Shelby Hewitt, the 32-year-old woman who posed as a Boston high school student, well, it was just too early. The story had just broke. There were too many unanswered questions. What we know now, almost a year after her arrest, is how far she was willing to go to pull this off and all the people in her orbit that she dragged into her act. Here's what's come out since. Shelby didn't just show up at a high school with a backpack and a sad story. She actually built a whole cast of characters to support her story, to make it sound believable. Fake social workers, a fake wealthy benefactor, we'll get into that in a bit, and she even used phony emails and phone numbers and payments to make this whole thing look real. I think the most interesting story that has come out since was her biggest target, which wasn't a high school kid, it was a therapist named Rebecca Burnett. In 2019, Shelby checked herself into the Walden Behavioral Center under her real name. And the facility where Shelby Hewitt was staying at was actually an adolescent residential center, a place designed for teenagers struggling with eating disorders, bulimia, anorexia, and other mental health issues. I told you that Shelby originally checked herself in using her real name, but at one point she comes back as Daniela Blake Herrera, a foster kid who had been trafficked, who didn't even know her real name and could barely read. So from 2019 to 2022, Shelby keeps running into Walden as Daniela, and she staged screaming fits, rocking back and forth. She spoke in childlike voices. There are reports that she even stripped herself naked during some of these supposed flashbacks. And staff thought that they were watching the trauma spell out in real time, but it was all theater. Now that we know what we know, the people around her at the time say that she was probably just trying to see how far she could push this. But it was in early 2002 when she had her sights on one person, her therapist, Rebecca Burnett. Burnett was a senior administrator at Walden, and she was polished, powerful, the type of woman that Shelby always wanted to zero in on. But in order to get care from Burnett, Shelby had to create documentation to prove that she was legit. So she created a bunch of fake social worker emails. She invented a fake benefactor who was supposedly a former prostitute who was very wealthy, and that's how she was getting her money. Every crisis was designed to make Burnett feel like Daniela needed her. This is where the story gets really weird, because earlier that year, Shelby asked Burnett if she could move in with her, which is a huge conflict for a patient to move in with their therapist. And Burnett said yes. And of course, she terminated her therapeutic relationship with Shelby and opened up her home. And this is where Shelby was living while she was impersonating a high school kid at Burke High School this whole time. So in the episode, when you hear me talk about the two therapists that were seen with her, John Smith was Burnett's husband. He was probably the guy that everybody saw walking around with her. And the Boston Globe reports that even at Christmas time, Shelby Hewitt got presents from Burnett and her husband. She got brand new AirPods, clothes, and it was like she was part of the family. And this whole time, Shelby, 32 years old, is playing at the high school basketball game, and her jersey number was 32. How ironic, right? And that's when the cracks started to show. But it wasn't until the story broke and the Boston Globe covered it and I covered it that people in Shelby's real life started realizing who they were friends with. See, when Shelby was in college, some of Shelby's roommates and friends have since come forward on TikTok to tell their story. This person met Shelby at Wheelock College in Boston back in 2009.
My best friend of 15 years is currently facing federal fraud charges for living a double life the entirety of our friendship. By day, she was a 30-something-year-old woman who was a DCF social worker in Massachusetts with almost 2 master's degrees. We went on trips together. She gave me some of the best life advice I have ever gotten. And by night, she was pretending to be a homeless, sex-trafficked teenager who was so severely traumatized and was in the foster system. She was enrolled in high school. She enrolled herself in high school.
But looking back on it now, knowing what she knows now, her old roommate says that Shelby was basically her mirror. She was whatever version of her you wanted her to be. Now she realizes that there were red flags. Shelby would, shift her identity depending on who she was with. She would copy her friends' mannerisms, clothing, even their speech. This roommate says that Shelby became really fixated on a college administrator named Snooki. Shelby would ask her roommate to send Snooki emails from her college account, fabricating crisis, missed class, emotional breakdowns. And over the years, this roommate kind of became this accomplice to Shelby's fantasy. The roommate says that anytime Snooki came to check in on Shelby, Shelby would regress into a baby voice and pretending that she couldn't even cut food and acted helpless. And this is a girl who was academically thriving, so her roommate just did not understand. Now, this is another TikToker who said that she roomed with Shelby while they were both in rehab together in February of 2024.
I was in an abusive relationship. I was having substance problems. I had bipolar. I'm 21 years old, and they introduced me to this girl, Shelby, who's 20. Okay? We become best fucking friends. She lied about her identity at the fucking rehab I was at. They thought her name was Shelby Hernandez, and she was 20 years old. She told me that she was autistic with Asperger's. She's not. She's literally not autistic at all. And so we would all feel so bad for her. And then we all put it together that she used another person's social security number and fake identity to get into this rehab to hide from the cops. So when we had the drill with the police force, she thought they fucking found her. It traumatized me so much because when I found out all of this, I couldn't believe that my friendship with her was a lie. I truly thought I found a bridesmaid. Okay, I really thought, this is my girl for life.
The real fallout was all these people discovering who her friend really was, right? They thought they knew Shelby as a friend, someone who was completely, quote unquote, normal, whatever that is. Some people knew her as a very disturbed person. Everybody had a different version of Shelby Hewitt, and the amount of betrayal, I think it's what really resonates with the people around her. So let's talk about what happened to Shelby Hewitt criminally. Back in July, Shelby Hewitt and her attorney and the prosecutors were trying to strike a deal. The prosecutors wanted her to plead guilty in some form, but her attorneys refused. So they cannot reach a plea deal. So that means if no deal is struck between now and then, a new trial is set to begin in February of 2026. If anything happens, of course, I'll let you know. Thank you for listening, and I hope you join us next week as we debut our new series, our new rabbit hole deep dive series of Pretend. That's coming up next week. Talk to you real soon.